The transport bay echoed with the heavy footsteps of the Kalok's warriors as they disembarked from their battle cruiser. Captain Lisa Kane watched from the observation deck as the alien delegation made their way through the station corridors, their towering 8-foot frames casting long shadows under the artificial lighting. "Another species that thinks humans are soft," muttered Lieutenant Commander Mark Torres, adjusting his standard-issue uniform that looked almost childlike compared to the battle armor worn by their guests. The Kaloks had requested this meeting after intercepting human distress signals from the Outer Rim territories. Their message had been clear. They were willing to discuss an alliance, but only if humanity could prove they weren't the weaklings their reputation suggested. Commander. Vera stood at the head of her squad, her crimson scales gleaming under the station lights. She had led the Kalok's 3rd Strike Force through 17 successful campaigns, and her contempt for what she perceived as human weakness was evident in every gesture. "So these are the famous humans," Vera announced loudly as she entered the briefing room, her voice carrying the distinctive growl of her species. "I expected warriors, not office clerks." Her squad members chittered in what passed for Kalok's laughter, their predatory eyes scanning the assembled human officers with obvious disdain. Mark stepped forward, extending his hand in the traditional human greeting. "Welcome aboard Station Echo. I'm Lieutenant Commander Torres, liaison for this diplomatic exchange." Vera looked down at the offered hand with amusement. "How quaint. Tell me, little male, do you even know how to hold a weapon? Or do your females do all the fighting for you?" The insult hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Several human officers shifted uncomfortably, while the Kalok squad erupted in more chittering laughter. Mark felt heat rise in his cheeks, but maintained his composure. "We believe in equality among our species," Mark replied evenly. "All humans serve according to their abilities regardless of gender." "Abilities," Vera repeated, her tone dripping with mockery. "Yes, I'm sure your abilities are truly impressive. Perhaps you can show us your skill at filing reports or brewing coffee." Shh. Tension in the room was palpable. Captain Kane moved to intervene, but Mark held up a subtle hand, stopping her. "Commander Vera, I understand your skepticism. Perhaps we could arrange a demonstration of human capabilities during your stay." "A demonstration?" Vera's eyes gleamed with predatory interest. "How delightful. Yes, weak male, show us what humanity can do." 3 days later, the demonstration arena was packed with both human personnel and Kalok's observers. The challenge had been simple: a series of combat simulations, tactical puzzles, and endurance tests designed to showcase military prowess. Mark had volunteered to represent humanity, despite protests from his superiors who worried about the diplomatic implications of failure. He stood in the center of the arena, wearing standard combat gear that looked almost primitive compared to the advanced Kalok's equipment. "Begin whenever you're ready, little male," Vera called from the observation platform. Her squad gathered around her like a pack of predators anticipating an easy meal. The first simulation activated, a virtual battlefield populated with hostile targets. Mark moved with fluid precision, his weapon seeming to become an extension of his body as he engaged multiple threats simultaneously. His movements were economical, wasting no energy, each shot finding its mark with mechanical accuracy. The Kaloks. Chittering gradually faded to silence. The tactical puzzle followed, a complex scenario requiring rapid decision-making under pressure. Mark analyzed the variables, processed the information, and formulated a strategy that not only solved the immediate problem, but anticipated 3 subsequent complications. His solution was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its effectiveness. Vera's expression had shifted from amusement to concentration. The endurance test was the final challenge, 12 hours of continuous physical and mental stress designed to break even the strongest warriors. As the hours progressed, Mark's human physiology began to show its true nature. Where other species would falter and fail, human endurance proved relentless. His body adapted, compensated, and continued functioning long past the point where most beings would collapse. When the 12 hours concluded, Mark stood breathing heavily but still upright. The arena had fallen completely silent. Vera descended from the observation platform, her heavy footsteps echoing in the quiet space. She approached Mark slowly, her predatory gaze now holding something that hadn't been there before: respect. "Impressive, human," she said quietly, the mockery gone from her voice. "Your species is more complex than our intelligence suggested." Mark wiped sweat from his forehead, meeting her gaze steadily. "We may not be the strongest or the fastest, Commander, but we endure. We adapt. We overcome." Over the following days, something unexpected began to develop. Vera found herself seeking out Mark's company, initially claiming she wanted to understand human tactical thinking. Their conversations evolved from military strategy to philosophy, from combat techniques to cultural exchange. "Your people fascinate me," Vera admitted during one of their evening discussions in the station's observation lounge. "We Kallox prize individual strength above all else, but you humans have something different. You have collective resilience." Mark nodded, gazing out at the stars beyond the viewport. "We learned long ago that survival isn't about being the apex predator. It's about being the most adaptable." "I misjudged you," Vera said suddenly, her voice carrying an unfamiliar note of vulnerability. "When I called you weak, I was applying Kallox values to human nature. I see now that was a mistake." "No offense taken, Commander. First impressions can be deceiving." Vera turned to face him fully. "I have a proposition for you, Mark Torres. My government has authorized me to select a human liaison for joint operations. I want you as my partner." Mark raised an eyebrow. "After calling me a weak male in front of your entire squad?" A sound that might have been Kallox laughter rumbled in Vera's throat. "Especially because of that. You proved me wrong in the most spectacular way possible. That takes courage, skill, and a strength I hadn't recognized before." The partnership that followed would become legendary in both human and Kallox military circles. Mark's adaptability and strategic thinking complemented Vera's raw power and combat experience perfectly. Their joint operations consistently achieved objectives that neither species could have accomplished alone. Years later, when asked about their unlikely alliance, Vera would tell her subordinates, "Never judge a species by your own standards. The humans taught me that true strength comes in many forms, and sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that doesn't look like a predator at all." Mark, for his part, would simply smile and note that understanding between species often begins with someone willing to prove that first impressions aren't always correct. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from dominating an opponent, but from earning their respect.